Have you ever felt deeply desired one moment and completely invisible the next? Like you were the center of someone's universe at night, but by morning, it seemed as if you had disappeared from their world? That confusion, that emotional roller coaster, isn't really love. It's a setup. Behind that charm, that confident smile, there can be something much darker than you might expect. Today, we're uncovering the reality. You're about to learn about 5 sexual secrets narcissists desperately try to keep hidden. And once you understand them, you'll never view them the same way again. When shared by 2 caring people, sex can be one of the purest forms of connection. It builds closeness, trust, and emotional security. But with a narcissist, that same experience can become a psychological battleground. It stops being about affection or mutual connection and becomes a tool, something cold, calculated, and manipulative. Narcissists understand very well how powerful sex can be. They know it can create emotional bonds, flood your body with feel-good chemicals, and make you feel safe and attached. But instead of honoring that power, they distort it. They use sex not to bring 2 hearts together, but to strengthen their control. Every kiss, every glance, every touch may carry a hidden purpose, not love, but power. In the beginning, sex with a narcissist often feels intoxicating. It's passionate, overwhelming, and magnetic. You may feel as though you've discovered the most irresistible connection of your life. But that intensity isn't accidental. It's part of the design. The narcissist uses sexual energy as a form of love bombing to pull you in quickly, create emotional dependence, and lower your defenses. You begin associating their touch with affection, their attention with your value, and their presence with emotional safety. What starts as passion slowly turns into conditioning. Almost without realizing it, that passion becomes conditional. Sex becomes a reward or a punishment. It's given when you comply and withheld when you don't. Over time, you start noticing a shift. The intimacy no longer feels mutual. Instead, it feels like a performance with only one leading role. If you boost their ego and make them feel important, they may shower you with affection. But the moment you express your own needs or challenge them, they pull away. The warmth vanishes. It's a game of giving and taking away. They offer closeness when they want control, and withdraw it when they want you confused, anxious, and seeking their approval. This is where sex becomes part of the manipulation cycle. Narcissists often use physical intimacy to influence your emotions. After an argument, they may initiate sex, not because they feel remorse or care, but because they want to reset the emotional dynamic and regain control. It's a way of saying, I decide when we're connected. It confuses your thinking, softens your anger, and blurs your memory of the pain they caused. You begin questioning yourself. Maybe you overreacted. Maybe they really do care. But that's exactly the goal. They don't need to apologize if they can make you forget the hurt through pleasure. That's how they keep you trapped in emotional confusion. Even more damaging is the way they use absence as a weapon. Suddenly they become distant. They stop touching you. They withdraw affection without explanation, leaving you wondering what you did wrong. Then, just when you begin to detach, they return with full intensity, passionate, attentive, and irresistible. That push and pull dynamic keeps you emotionally hooked, constantly trying to get back the version of them that once made you feel alive. But that version was never genuine. It was a mask, a strategy, a carefully practiced performance. The emotional high they gave you in the beginning wasn't real connection. It was bait. This entire pattern leaves deep emotional wounds. It conditions you to associate love with pain, passion with fear, and intimacy with anxiety. That's the hidden power behind narcissistic sexual manipulation. It's never really about the act itself. It's about controlling your emotions. They don't crave your heart. They crave ownership of it. And the cruelest part is that they use your natural desire for love and closeness as the leash. Meeting a narcissist can feel like stepping into a dream. The way they look at you, talk to you, and touch you feels electric, almost like fate. But that's because it's often too perfect to be real. Narcissists are masters of illusion, and one of their strongest tactics is love bombing. They overwhelm you with attention, compliments, and passion to make you emotionally dependent. It isn't genuine connection. It's calculated influence. Beneath the charm, there's often no emotional depth, only strategy. During this early phase, they mirror you. They reflect your values, your dreams, and your beliefs. As a result, it feels like you finally met someone who truly understands you. They talk about forever. They speak about destiny and how rare your connection is. They text constantly, seek your time, and tell you that you're unlike anyone they've ever met. But much of this doesn't come from authentic emotion. It's an act designed to bypass your defenses by creating a whirlwind of intensity. They make you skip the natural process of building trust and fall too deeply, too quickly. Sex plays a major role in maintaining this illusion. It's passionate, frequent, and feels emotionally meaningful. They'll say things like, "I've never felt this connected before," or "No one understands me the way you do." But the truth is that this intensity is not proof of love. It's manipulation. The narcissist uses sex to reinforce emotional dependency. The chemicals released during intimacy, oxytocin, dopamine, and endorphins, create feelings of attachment and euphoria. Your brain connects those feelings to them. Once that bond forms, they know they can influence you more easily. When they feel they've secured your loyalty, the shift begins. The warmth fades, the effort decreases, messages become less frequent, compliments become rare. The passion that once seemed endless starts disappearing. Where they once celebrated your uniqueness, they begin highlighting your flaws. The person who once made you feel special now leaves you feeling confused and inadequate. When you ask why things have changed, they often turn it back on you. You're imagining things. You're too sensitive. You're overthinking. They gaslight you until you begin doubting your own perceptions and memories. Then comes the painful realization. The person you fell in love with never truly existed. The intense connection you believed in wasn't love. It was a carefully constructed trap. The love bombing phase wasn't an expression of devotion. It was bait designed to pull you in before the mask slipped. By the time you recognize what's happening, you're already emotionally invested, questioning yourself, and longing for the validation they once gave so freely. That initial affection was never authentic. It was part of the setup. And the narcissist often knew exactly what they were doing. Narcissists don't typically enter relationships for the same reasons emotionally healthy people do. Most people seek closeness, understanding, and mutual support. Narcissists seek admiration. They crave constant attention to support their fragile self-image. Their need for control shapes nearly every aspect of their relationships, especially emotional and sexual ones. To them, true intimacy feels threatening. Vulnerability feels dangerous. Being genuinely seen threatens the perfect image they work so hard to maintain. Deep down, they often fear being ordinary, flawed, or unworthy. As a result, they avoid genuine closeness whenever possible. Sex with a narcissist may begin as something intense and consuming, but it's rarely about shared connection. It's a performance centered around them. If they appear attentive, it may be because they want praise for being exceptional, not because they genuinely care about your satisfaction. They feed on admiration. They want to hear how amazing they are, how irresistible they seem, and how unforgettable they are. The moment that praise disappears, or the attention shifts toward your needs, their interest often fades. Sexual connection, like every other form of attention, becomes another source of ego reinforcement. Once that purpose has been served, the experience loses its significance for them. What makes this even more painful is what happens when intimacy starts becoming genuinely real. Authentic closeness requires honesty, trust, and emotional reciprocity, qualities many narcissists struggle to maintain because true vulnerability threatens their defenses. The moment you seek deeper emotional connection, they may pull away or abruptly change the subject. Their mask begins to crack under genuine intimacy. Rather than embracing closeness, they often replace it with control, criticism, or emotional withdrawal. And that's the heartbreaking truth about intimacy with a narcissist. You offer your heart, hoping to build something meaningful, but they may take only what serves their needs: admiration, validation, and control. To them, love isn't a partnership, it's possession. Until you recognize that reality, you can remain trapped in their cycle, constantly reaching for the warmth they once gave and never realizing that it was often being used as a tool. They are frequently unwilling or sometimes unable to give in the way healthy relationships require. They'll pull back, emotionally detach, or even sabotage the connection itself. At times, they'll mock or minimize moments of vulnerability through sarcasm, silence, indifference, or subtle criticism. These behaviors create emotional distance and allow them to avoid the genuine intimacy they fear. The result is a relationship that feels deeply confusing. One moment you're pulled close, and the next you're pushed away. One day you're cherished, and the next you're ignored. This inconsistency isn't accidental. It's part of the cycle that keeps many people emotionally invested for far longer than they ever intended. Over time, you may find yourself working harder and harder to earn the affection that was once given so freely. You begin chasing the beginning, hoping the person you first met will return. Yet the more you chase, the more control they gain. The tragedy is that many victims mistake this emotional turbulence for passion. They assume that the extreme highs and painful lows are signs of a deep connection, when in reality, healthy love rarely feels like an endless emotional emergency. Real intimacy creates safety. Real love creates stability. Real connection allows both people to be seen, heard, and valued. A narcissist, however, often struggles to maintain those qualities because genuine intimacy requires mutual vulnerability, accountability, and empathy, qualities that threaten the very defenses they rely on. That's why understanding these patterns is so important. Once you see the difference between authentic connection and manipulation, the illusion begins to lose its power. What once seemed mysterious starts making sense. What once felt like your fault begins to reveal itself as part of a larger pattern. The cycle of idealization, devaluation, withdrawal, and temporary affection becomes easier to recognize. And when you recognize it, you become less vulnerable to its influence. The greatest secret narcissists try to hide isn't simply how they manipulate through sex or affection. It's how dependent they are on maintaining the illusion. Without the illusion, their control weakens. Without confusion, their tactics become visible. And once those tactics become visible, the spell that kept you questioning yourself begins to break. That's when clarity returns. That's when emotional freedom becomes possible. And that's when you stop chasing the version of someone who never truly existed and start reconnecting with the reality you had been encouraged to ignore. The more clearly you understand these behaviors, the easier it becomes to separate genuine love from manipulation. What once felt like destiny can be recognized as strategy. What once felt like connection can be understood as control. And that understanding has the power to change everything. When you try to connect on a deeper level, to share your feelings or open up emotionally, they may treat it as a weakness or make you feel as though you're asking for too much. This response isn't random. It's a defense mechanism. A narcissist struggles with emotional exposure. Because of that, they often dismiss it, reject it, belittle it, or twist the situation until you feel embarrassed for even wanting genuine closeness. In relationships with narcissists, partners frequently end up feeling emotionally deprived. You may be physically close to them, but emotionally left standing in the cold. You can share the same bed and still feel completely disconnected. Whenever you attempt to have meaningful conversations about love, growth, trust, or emotional connection, you're often met with blank stares, half-hearted responses, indifference, or even ridicule. Gradually, this absence of true intimacy becomes deeply confusing. You begin wondering why someone who once seemed completely captivated by you has become so distant and detached. You start questioning yourself. Maybe you're too emotional. Maybe you're too needy. Maybe your expectations are unrealistic. But the reality isn't that you're asking for too much. It's that they never intended to provide it in the first place. To a narcissist, relationships are not emotional partnerships. They are transactions. They give just enough to keep you nearby, maintain the illusion, and preserve their source of admiration. But once the excitement fades or the attention shifts elsewhere, they begin searching for new ways to feed their ego. It's not uncommon for them to flirt with others, seek validation outside the relationship, or deliberately create jealousy simply to stir emotional turmoil. Because for them, anything that places them at the center of attention feels like power, and power is what they crave most. So while you're longing for closeness, warmth, and authentic connection, the narcissist often isn't built for that kind of relationship. They don't want to be truly known. They want to be admired. The more you try to reach their authentic self, the further they tend to retreat, because genuine intimacy requires honesty. And honesty is a mask they're terrified to remove. Withholding affection is one of the narcissist's quietest yet most effective weapons. It's not always dramatic or obvious. Sometimes it hides in silence. Sometimes it appears in distance. Sometimes it's found in the cold shoulder that fills an entire room with tension. It's the sudden shift from warmth to emotional ice without any explanation, leaving you confused and wondering what you did wrong. This isn't passive behavior. It's often intentional. When a narcissist withholds affection, it's rarely because they've stopped caring entirely. More often, it's because they want to unsettle you. They understand how much you value closeness. By taking it away, they gain leverage and control. In the beginning, they may have overwhelmed you with affection. Every word, every touch, every gesture made you feel chosen, noticed, and adored. But once they know you're emotionally invested, they start pulling back. Compliments become less frequent. Intimacy begins feeling forced. Sometimes it disappears altogether. You might notice they stop initiating contact, avoid eye contact, or seem distracted whenever you attempt to get close. When you ask what's wrong, they dismiss your concerns with excuses. They're tired, they're stressed, they're busy, they're not in the mood. Yet over time, a pattern becomes visible. Affection seems to return only when you've met their expectations. This cycle creates anxiety and emotional dependency. One day you feel loved, the next day you feel invisible. Slowly, you begin linking their affection to your behavior. You replay conversations in your mind. You analyze every word, every expression, every gesture, searching for what might have pushed them away. You may even find yourself apologizing for things you never actually did, simply to regain the warmth that once came naturally. That's exactly how they want it. You start walking on eggshells, working harder and harder to win back what was once given freely. It increases their power and keeps you chasing. Sexual intimacy becomes another instrument of control. They may use it to pull you back whenever they sense you're slipping away emotionally. Or they may use it to remind you of their influence over you. But when they want to punish you or assert dominance, they withdraw it entirely. Suddenly they're too tired, too busy, too distracted, too uninterested. They understand that denying affection and touch can hurt just as deeply as harsh words. Their body becomes a tool, something to withhold, something to manipulate with, something that causes you to question your worth. What makes this even more painful is their refusal to acknowledge what's happening. They behave as if nothing has changed. When you bring it up, they accuse you of being needy, insecure, or overly sensitive. This form of gaslighting leaves you doubting your own perception. You start wondering whether you're being unreasonable. Maybe your desire for connection really is excessive. Maybe you're expecting too much. Eventually, many people learn to suppress their own needs simply to avoid conflict, and that silence gives the narcissist even more control. They decide when closeness happens. They decide when affection returns. They decide when peace exists. After a while, the relationship begins to feel empty. You find yourself living through a kind of emotional winter, constantly trying to stay warm through memories that have long since gone cold. The same person who once made you feel seen now makes you feel invisible. Yet you continue holding on, hoping the warmth will return.